Here we are.
Okay. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that we're here today on Treaty 4 land. Our school division has land also on Treaty 2. Treaty 4 is the traditional territory of the Cree, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, Sault, and the Métis Nation. We in Southeast Cornerstone respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with the Indigenous nation in the spirit of education, reconciliation, and collaboration. And today is National Aboriginal Day, so happy, Aboriginal Day, so that would be great. Okay, so we'll call meeting to order, and the agenda for the meeting has been attached to your for your review. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Eric?
I'll make that motion that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Eric. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, if there's any board member who feels they're in conflict of interest when any of the items of the agenda are discussed, you can declare it now and we can make note of it, or you can just declare it when the agenda item arises. So the next item is number 4, and the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll entertain a motion. Jim.
Chairperson, I will make a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Education on May 24th, 2023 be approved as presented.
Thank you. For the motion, is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. At this time, we'll just take a moment to give board members an opportunity to discuss anything that's happened in their area they want to talk about. It's a round table discussion. So I know there's events going on in the division. So just throw your hand up if you have anything you want to discuss.
I just want to congratulate, of course, grads everywhere. I've seen some freshmen, but I want to congratulate all the Savannah grads and all the other grads throughout the division.
Thank
you. There was a lot of really, really good ceremonies up there.
Thank you.
I want to say goodbye and congratulations to Mr. Gord's husband. He's been with us for a lot of years. Started 3 years ago at Estevan Junior High, a principal in Estevan, superintendent of human resources, superintendent of schools, and most recently a deputy director for us. Congratulations, Gord, on winning the competition for Director of Education at Prairie Valley School Division. You'll be greatly missed after 20-some years in this school division, so I'm sorry to see you go. Congratulations to Nathan Johnson, who has accepted the role of superintendent of human resources. And with a number of the cuts that have happened around the school division, we will be restructuring once again in terms of how that looks at the school division level. So thank you, Gord, for all your years of service.
And we will miss you, for sure.
We'll try not to spit when we say Prairie Valley.
Spit on the floor.
I attended the Labor Comprehensive School graduation last week, and they had a gorgeous day, and it was outside in the football field, and there were a lot of people there. I never heard the count, but it was a very nice graduation ceremony. 155 kids. It takes a long time to put that many people across the stage, so it was a lovely day, and it was nice because anybody that wanted to attend could come and sit wherever. It was very nice, and you could hear it was excellent.
Oh, great. That's good to hear.
I also attended the Penguin graduation, and a little bit different. There was only 8 graduates. It was also a very nice ceremony.
Yeah, I was invited to go to that grad as well, and at the beginning of them, they made an acknowledgement to Southeast Cornerstone for the support of their small school, and thank you for that on behalf of the board. So I thought that was really nice. Unfortunately, there was more than one grad in that, and so my else was the same. I wouldn't be able to attend that one. But. Hey, so Now we're going to, I think this is where this agenda. We're going to move 7.23 up to now because Ernie's here and he's going to do his report on the director evaluation. And so in the interest of time and letting him get on the road to get home, we'll move that item of the agenda up now. So welcome, Ernie, and you would like to give a presentation.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that you are having me first hearing what happens on the road this morning. Yeah, I might get back to Saskatoon by Monday or so. Thank you very much. So this ends 6 weeks of the journey that we've had in this school division with the director appraisal. And I want to thank Carolyn and Keith, and I see a lot of staff members around here that I actually interviewed during the time that we did this. So it's kind of nice that they're here hearing just how this all kind of comes together. To start off with, I think it's important for everybody to acknowledge that this just doesn't come out of the blue. This is a process that is in your policies. It's part of your director's contract, that an annual assessment take place. And this was Keith's first for this particular past year, August 1st to May 31st. And I'm pleased to say that from all reports, from various people that I interviewed, Keith has had a very good year. Let me just frame this a little bit for you. Policy 12 is one of the policies that Keith has to pay very close attention to, because it does outline the responsibilities of the director of education. There are 10 areas of responsibility, some of them being student well-being, leadership, fiscal responsibility, board personnel management, board relations, and student achievement. And when I look at your wall, I can tell that that is a pretty important part, not only of his duties, but the duties of the Board of Education as well. And it's nice to see this kind of display that brings that to the fore. The process was fairly straightforward. I met with the HR committee and Keith prior to this whole process taking place. It was determined that we were following the policy, particularly Appendix B, that the board members are able to see during the workshop that we held on June the 9th. Much of the information came from the director, who did about a 45-minute presentation, as you'll recall, outlining how he was successful in achieving many of the quality indicators or evaluation indicators that the director had to follow. I did the interviews. There were 28 interviews that took about an hour and some. The interviews included the deputy directors, superintendents, managers, coordinators, the admin council made up of 7 principals. And then I think, again, the committee that I met with selected at random 5 other principals and 2 vice principals who I interviewed as well. So we had a good cross-section of people in the system to talk to. The questions were, again, in your policy and fairly straightforward. What I asked them was about whether the director provides clear direction, maintains positive working relationships, commitment to the needs of students, empowers others, the kind of typical things that you would want in a leader in a large organization like Southeast Cornerstone. I went to, I had interviews here in Weyburn, but I also did a day in Estevan, and I did about half a day in Moosomin as well. So I got to see and meet quite a large number of your staff. I've said this before to you. I was absolutely welcomed by very professional people. And never once did I hear anybody say, I'd rather be doing something else other than talking to you. I found everyone to be receptive. I found everyone to be very professional. And Madam Chair, I have nothing but compliments for the 28 people that I met who were willing to voice their assessment of Keith's past year. Then the board stepped in, taking all this information, the interviews, the director's presentation, the policy that you followed. And we went through each of those 10 responsibilities in policy, 12. And after each one of these, the board made an assessment. And generally, the assessment was meets expectations and in some instances exceeds expectations. So out of all of that, the director put together a positive path forward, or nothing more than a professional development plan for himself. And I understand that he's already talked to staff about what the plan will be all about. So in conclusion, I have to say, again, it has been a real pleasure for me, Madam Chair. And so wonderful to be able to meet some of your staff. I know I didn't get a chance to meet them all, but I met so many. And the report is now been filed with you. You and your board have had a chance to see it. And I would just simply say that this report, I believe, represents Keith's year very, very well. I think he's got a lot to be proud of. And in conclusion, would just recommend to you and the board that you accept this report as his performance appraisal.
Well, thank you, Ernie. And I too, on behalf of the board, thank you for your diligence in getting this done. We started a little late and we wanted it done before the end of June. Appreciate that you did make the effort to get in touch with all those people that you met with and put your report together. And it's been our pleasure to work with you as well. And I'd be happy to entertain a motion now. The Board of Education of the Southeast Cornerstone Public School Division approves the Director of Education Performance Review Report as developed during the evaluation workshop on June 9th and as an accurate description of the Director's performance for the period August 1st, 2022 to May 31st, 2023.
Tammy Scott, also moved.
Thank you, Tammy. You've heard the motion. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Ernie. Appreciate the work you did.
And thank you, and have a good year coming up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
Back on to
Biannual transportation report. 6.1.
point one. Where was I?
Yeah, and it's right in the back.
Oh,
Number 6.
Come up here. Just looking for annual transportation.
Specs up first.
Yeah, right there. Perfect.
Okay, so this is our biannual transportation report. Kind of did some color scheming here. So we're looking right here. The person wants the other purple side basically would give us a full year if you want to do a comparison and stuff. So the routes. The total number of students, it's fairly static and stuff. As far as routes and things like that, where we had to add some, we have found some deficiencies. So right now we have, currently today, we have 134 bus routes. And as of September 1st, we will have take over 23 routes per student, which will give us 155 routes. So, I'm talking about first student. I want to thank, that we're transitioning into, taking over all of the last routes of first student. It's been great working with them for the past 7 years. They've been with us we've had contracts with them for 10 years. Very professional. They worked with us. We adopted our transportation policy to them. Anytime we had to have meetings or surveillance systems and stuff, we would put them in their buses. So it was, I just want to thank them. I also want to thank all the drivers that are coming over to Southeast Cornerstone. We actually met with all of the drivers on 2 occasions. Connie has posted all those routes, and I'm not sure how many, but I think like more than 3/4 have been filled with this. So that's very encouraging and stuff. The other piece on this report I want to, so we did driver recruitment fairs in the past couple of weeks. I did not attend. Our operations, our transportation supervisor, Annie Verhage, and whoever the foreman for that area conducted them. We didn't have a great deal in numbers, but the people that did show up, I think are very interested. So there was basically 8 fairs, and we ended up with 11 potential drivers. So hopefully, and then we're thinking about doing is another fair in September. Try to work it around harvest and stuff, but because the 3 areas that we're believing that we're going to need drivers is Fillmore, Redverse, and there's 3. Fillmore, Redverse, and Radville. So we're going to go out to those communities and do another recruitment fair. So just wanted to give you, is there any questions on any of this? Just kind of had a couple more points I wanted to mention. So the Mooseman Transportation shop renovation is going well. We'll definitely have it ready to go for the new academic year. We are waiting on, here's the wild card. We're waiting on 18 new buses that are on order. The company has promised we should have them in August. If we don't have them in August, we have enough spare buses that we can fill all the routes for September, for the new academic year.
How many are they?
Routes?
No, how many are actually kind of backward? Most of them, of that 18?
We're waiting for 18.
They're all backward.
Well, they're building. They're basically building. So, yeah, it's been a long stretch. We just awarded the GPS system for all our buses, and they will be putting all the GPS system in our school buses over the summer, and we should have them ready to go for September 1. So basically protects our drivers, protects students. Now that and we're looking forward to, company is Sonova Cal Amp. They're based out of Markham, Ontario. We just had a conference call with them this morning, and sounds pretty encouraging. So we'll have surveillance cameras and GPS systems in most of our buses, our newer buses anyway, for sure.
Andy,
Yes.
you said 75% of the 22 routes that we got that make our bill now.
Well, just with those the 23 first student routes.
Yeah. So there will be still lots there to fill out, and what areas would that be in?
Redverse for sure. That's one. We've lost some drivers there. They were EAs and bus drivers, but now that they're employees of ours, they can't do both. It puts them in an overtime situation.
Oh.
So when they were the first student, they would be able to do.
Oh.
So we've lost 3 of those, and Yeah, we're trying to work some things around. We'll have to see what we can do. Because they really want to drive bus. They also have the aid position, so. Any other questions? Keith only gave me 5 minutes.
You were bang up, Andy.
Does anyone have any questions for Andy? Oi, quiet bunch today. That's it then. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
For your report. And we would entertain a motion to accept that report.
I have a motion that the board acknowledge the receipt of the biannual transportation report presented by the manager of facilities and transportation, Andy Dobson, with a focus on transportation performance information.
Thank you, Megan. For the question, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, it's time for wall walk.
All right, well, we have a few people with us, joining us here today to take us through a wall walk. Apologies, regrets from Kathy Hill, who had to go back to school to deal with an issue, so she won't be joining us this afternoon, but we have the other school superintendents, as well as Aaron Hiskey joining us here. This is the first year we've moved to 4 wall walks within the year. That was in order to take a deeper dive and a more reasonable time frame. We've gone back to our schools and they've indicated that taking that many snapshots throughout the year spends too much time evaluating students when we could be putting the things in place in order to improve their outcomes. So we're looking at moving back to that 3 times a year wall walk, just based on the feedback we're getting from the system administrators and RTI teachers across the system. This will be a bit of a generalized one as we're coming to the end of our education sector strategic plan, our provincial education plan, the interim plan that we've had for the past couple of years. We'll be moving into the new plan, 2023 to 2030. So the next 7 years, we'll be coming up with a new plan. We're in the process right now of developing that, both at the school and system levels. So this will be kind of the last snapshot we see here, but you'll see some of this data coming into the new plan. So thankfully, from the ministry and from the people that are building that provincial education plan, it looks like a gradual transition into what data we're going to collect. I don't see us not collecting information on reading or math ever. I think those are our core pieces of business, but there are some other pieces, new pieces coming into that provincial education plan coming in. I think many of the things we're doing already will dovetail nicely into that. The data we have here will be stuff that we look at today. There's also some future pieces that we're going to look at kind of post-mortem rather than looking at pre. We've got a lot of the things that are pre here to things like our graduation rates, but as we're not at the end of the year yet, we won't have that actual graduation rate data, credit attainment data, but that's something we will be looking at into the next year. So some of this plan, although it's getting to the end of, we'll still be looking at some of the data into next year. And again, we'll also be looking at where we need to provide the supports across the system to improve some of the markers that we have here.
So even though we're now prepping our new plans coming in there, if graduation rates, for example, wasn't one of the priorities, that wouldn't mean that we would stop recording that. We would continue to keep an eye on that.
We would take a look at which pieces fit into that new plan, and graduation rates may be part of it. One of the pillars of that new plan is teaching and learning. Transitions, there's a piece around First Nations, there's a piece around mental health and well-being. So I see that teaching and learning, many of the things that we're doing are already tied to that. The transition pieces, I think, are tied to some of those graduation rates because they talk about transitions into school, between grades, and then out of school as well. So I think some of the things that are already there are going to dovetail nicely into, but there are some new pieces to include in that as well. And we know that when we put new pieces on, we also want to take some pieces off so we're not overloading teachers in schools or students in classrooms or communities with all of those particular pieces that we're doing. I think we're well situated. I think Aaron and his team has done a good job of kind of compiling the stuff that we're looking at now. We've gone out and asked each administrator as well as at a school level, which of these pieces in the new plan, when you look at it, are you already doing? Which pieces aren't you? And what supports might you need to be able to do that? So we're in the process of that right now. I know with our strategic planning coming up in the summer, that'll be some of the work as the board, as well as some of the work around the senior leadership is taking that data and then implementing the plan starting next year and easing into it over the next couple. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron and his group to kind of walk us through some of the generalized data and what we're seeing.
Okay, I believe Kevin Hagan's going to start us off with some math results and some ELA results.
We're starting at the wrong end.
We're mixing it up. We're starting the far end today.
I was got to the last, so.
And we can't put math at the end because he's a math guy, so.
Yes, exactly. But I know we double duty. I'm going to talk about ELA as well as math. So I'm going to actually jump back and forth a little bit because the data is very, very similar in terms of what we're collecting here. So we'll start with the math though. As mentioned before, the crucial literacy outcomes is what this chart is. And over in ELA, the same crucial outcomes that Dimitri's identified as critical for students to be able to learn and understand before moving on to the next grade level. We asked our teachers to front load those in their year plans and get them taught, assessed, reassessed as necessary throughout the course of the year. This data is from the end of report period 3, so it's not the complete year-end data, and it would have been shared with the schools after we collected the data and we received the school superintendents. We shared it with the schools so that we could have a conversation with their classroom teacher about areas of need where things still need to be taught or retaught as necessary. You see there's some spots with some yellow and some red in there, which are decent grades and areas where teachers would have to do some reteaching there. And I know I bragged up this year the math with the improvements over the course of the year was something we hadn't necessarily seen as a big growth over the year. So sitting back, I really noticed that. You look at, this is a grade 6 to 9 historical graph. You can see how up here at the grade 6, 7, 8, and things really started to increase. Same here. The early years did okay, but kind of leveled off all the way through. But as we got into the older grades, it started to really improve. The grade level equivalents, not quite as much a dramatic growth, but some growth along the way all the time. My hypothesis that goes back to those crucial literacies. In numeracy, that's the cause of that. But there's also a new math program. Math Up is the new math resource that teachers are using in their classroom right now. So it might not be just that one variable that's there. I'm gonna still hold out that that's what it could be. I thought it was interesting when I looked at the math data, again from back over there, I can see the growth here in the middle years, which is significant. That's not something we've seen as much over the years. When you look at the reading data, you'll see the growth is the growth is more in the early years. Out in the middle years. Which to me, we had a new teacher orientation here on Monday, and one of the things that was discussed there is no matter what subject level you teach, you need to infuse literacy into your lessons and teach kids to read. So I taught science, I taught math. I still try to teach kids how to read the math textbook, the science textbook, or the text, whatever we're reading, similar to what an ELA teacher would do. That's something that we still need to address, I think, on teachers as a growth area for all of us. And that would help improve those mid-year scores over here on that side. Overall, though, back to the math piece, because that's my favorite. I'm excited to see the growth that's here and the improvement, because we hadn't seen that as big an increase over the years that we had. We've seen lots of increase in our reading scores over the years. That was a real focus when we started at the wall walks and stuff. Was on reading was really big, and we saw immediate improvement. We continue to see improvement in our kids. Math seems to be, we're not sure what to do with math. I think the critical outcomes that were identified are helping us get there.
Are you seeing the impacts of the COVID disruption starting to level out a little bit, or do you have a cohort, say your grade 2, grade 3, that is still struggling?
Tammy, if I could, we report on GLO at Fontes and Penel to the ministry. So all of this is the data we use to improve that final goal, right?
Right.
And when we look at the G, the L, and the O levels, the O is the grade 3 level.
Yeah.
We see our grade 1s where our concern is right now. It's our grade 1s are about 2 percentage points lower than they have been in previous years. Our grade 2s and our grade 3s are actually 5 or 6 percentage points higher than they have been in previous years. So they're actually reading at a higher level than they would have been in previous years. And those have been COVID kids. And the hypothesis when we looked at it would be that we put extra supports into those kids to get them up to that level. And I think then now we need to take a look at our grade 1s going into grade 2 to put those extra supports in place there So I think almost perhaps our schools and our RTI focused on those kids that were in those COVID pieces to improve them to a level they needed to be. Now we got to go back, I think, and make sure that our grade ones going into grade two get that same support, and we focus on the grade ones coming into grade two. Sorry, Kevin, I just have something that's very interesting looking at those numbers.
I think I'd echo that too, is that we had that data from our COVID experience, and we could see where the gaps were existing, and maybe just not seeing the level of performance that we had. And so it was a distinct effort at the school level to maximize that RTI model to address those areas that we see within our data. And I think we're seeing the positive impact of that. But like Keith has alluded to, anytime you focus on an area, you should get improvement, but then there's another area over here that you gotta reevaluate.
So that'll be our course correction, is looking at those grade twos, those kids going into grade two. But very pleased with where the grade twos and threes this year turned out.
That's good.
This last thing I'll share, there's a lot of other data here broken down by grade and the different pieces there. Because that's the data that schools we use now at the end of the school year, as they have their transition meetings with teacher to teacher, identify kids and where reading levels are at, or math levels are at, so they can build cohorts or groups within the classrooms next year for small group instruction going into that. We don't have the benefit of the September screen because we're going, as mentioned earlier, from 4 to 3 screens next year. So this data will be that initial set of data that teachers can use to prep and prepare for the fall. And try to improve the reading and math skills for the kids.
Interesting conversation from teachers going from that 4 to the 3, is that what they said was, we can rescreen individual students or groups of students as we put interventions in place. There's no need to rescreen everybody at that point in time. So to go to the 3 gives them enough data to use that, and then when we put that intervention in place, they'll rescreen those smaller groups or individual students to see if what they're doing is working to improvement. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will go up next. I'm Kathy Hilson. So I'm stepping in for Kathy today. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the early learning and care pieces. And as Kevin mentioned before, we did see some really nice growth in our early learning groups, and then maybe table up a little bit for our 4, 5, 6s. And back to Tam's question there about the COVID group. At the winter screen, the grade 4s were a little worried about where they were at, and they ended in a great spot. So we were able to shine a light on that data, have a conversation with our school saying, hey, what are grade 4 kids doing? Have a little look at them, and we're able to end the year in a nice spot with them. So it's great to have the data to respond to in a timely fashion. We're a large organization, but we can still pivot and be rather fluid on how we're aiming our supports. So Keith mentioned our reading rates for grades 1, 2, and 3 are looking quite good. Grade 1's down a little bit, but 2 and 3 are up higher than they have been for quite some time. The early learning quarterly stats for our 0 to 5, we've got our case numbers and our caseload up there, as well as how many folks have been consulted on caseload. You'll notice that the active caseload is the bluer line, and we're starting to go a little bit back forward. This is from January to March of this school year, so it's kind of over time. So it's down a little bit traditionally from what we had pre-COVID, but once again, that's our folks coming into the homes and working with families in the homes, and there's been a little bit of reluctance to kind of get those relationships kind of built back together again. And when we had the COVID period there where we didn't have those connections at all, it's difficult. It almost seems like it's a little bit outside the norm to have folks come into your home now and visit with your kids, right? So we're still recovering from that a little bit. But the folks that we do have on caseload and the kids that we are connecting with, the green here is the growth that's been happening over time with the kids that we work with, and then the yellow here indicate our kids that are in our other classrooms that we have not been able to connect with. So you can see that when we do make a connection with folks, we move in quite quickly and quite a long way. So there earlier is evaluation. That's where the students in kindergarten enter the year, and based on the RTI kind of model and tiered model on where they exit the year. And you'll see that there's once again lots of growth in those from where they start in kindergarten, where they exit kindergarten. And then we've got a couple different pieces here on the board. Is the EYE kind of predicts, or it can be used as a predictor for our reading rates and our reading results later on. And you can see the growth on where the kids entered in the EYE, where they started from, and then the second column is where they exited and what the reading results are in grades 1, 2, and 3. You see we've got great growth there all the way along. And the last two graphs here kind of correlate that to attendance. Some of the students that didn't perhaps have as much growth also had a little bit of some gaps in their attendance for one reason or the other. So we've got a strong correlation. I would suggest we have a strong correlation through the entire board of attendance and success, but it's really evident in the early years. If they're not there, we have a hard time connecting with them and moving them along. Those were my pieces for Kathy. Jeff, you're up next.
Certainly hope you're not thinking they were the warm-up band for me. All right. From here over tends to be an aggregate, and all of it pulled together and is about the division. Over there is individual schools, and we dive into there and we know where to target our interventions. This here is a list of our chronically absent and severely chronically absent students. 10% and over, and 20% and over. And certainly an area for concern. And we are working hard on this one now. Every day we get a report. Board sends out 2 reports every day on how each and every one of our schools are doing from yesterday. We're still doing hard on the messaging from our schools. Our principals are talking to parents. Every time we have a gathering of parents, we talk about the importance of being there and whatnot. We're certainly working hard on this one, but and like I said, if you're not here, it makes all the rest of it pretty hard to put together. These here are the accumulated attendance for all grades. This is our First Nations kids, pre-kindergarten, K to 8, and 12 or 9 to 12, sorry. And it's over the year. You can see when you have a jump like that in April, we had a lot of snowstorms and whatnot. So this is the data. This is last year. This is this year. Last year, this year. So I'm waiting for the trend to do this, and it's not. So it's certainly an area of concern for us, and we're working on that, but just part of being data informed.
Jeff, I think that's one thing that we struggle with is when we did our wall walk as an SLT and as a coordinated group. One of the things we talked about is that we've done a lot of things that hasn't really moved the dial on tennis. We have some anecdotal evidence around since COVID, schools maybe become less important. People are more likely to go on holidays, or leave on a Wednesday, or set hair appointment up on a Monday. There's a number of issues in there. So and it's a weird juxtaposition that our achievement data seems to be doing pretty well. Our attendance data is very poor. So we've got to do some more work and some more digging to say what's the correlation between the kids who are missing and what their achievement levels are. And are there specific kids or groups of kids that we need to focus on in order to get them to school because their achievement levels have come off? So maybe a different approach to looking at the attendance, but that's a frustration we've had for a number of years, that regardless of the number of things that we've tried to do, it hasn't really touched the dial. And since COVID, it's even gotten worse than where it was.
Jeff, is that a provincial trend?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm talking to other directors across the province.
Yeah.
It's not an abnormal trend we've seen in other school divisions. Some even worse than where we are, depending on what system, the geographic location, some of the other variables in there.
I think we have more control over this side of the board because we can target our interventions. But this year, a lot of that lies outside of our control, but not outside of our sphere of influence. So we're using our influence to try and move that down. These ones right here are east and west and south area, and they are the 4 treaty outcomes that we report on. This is our second year reporting on them. And the first year we got into a logistical problem in terms of reporting it, is you don't report by subject, you report by student. But you might teach in an ELA, one of the outcomes, you might teach another one in math. And then we have to put them all together to make them appear on this one. So we've been far more diligent and talking with our administrators, where are you at, keeping them updated and whatnot. So we have one more report to come in for the end of this year, and that should be the one that closes up all the gaps that are in there. White is actually worse than in this one. White means they haven't been taught at all, and red means they've been taught, but we're maybe not to the success that we're looking for. So we're looking for that to close up at the end of the year on our final report card. And this is our school data here that we've got on that. And this is a positive sense of belonging, positive relationships, anxiety, and advocacy at school. And they are listed from 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, right across the way and whatnot. And so you intend to find the COVID area in there. In general, they're sort of trending, I'd say flat, but this is the one that still causes us that concern. Moderate or high level of anxiety. And you can see this here is elementary and that is the secondary. And you can see there's just a bump. So that is still an area that we're putting a lot of time and effort into.
And that's one that is going to be one of the pillars, one of the focuses going into the new provincial education plan is the mental health and well-being focus. And this is one that we've done a lot of work on. We're going to continue to do a lot of work on, but again, it's one of those things as you look at how well our teachers are doing, it's about doing more with less in terms of budgetary dollars and being able to, so we're trying to find novel ways of addressing these particular pieces. We're looking at some of those tier one kind of supports, and that's some of the stuff that we're getting back from staff.
And over here, each of those lines would be like a report card for a stool in a different subject area, a grade and whatnot. This would be the report card for the stool division. And so right across the top, these grayed out areas, those are the screens and the benchmarks that we test our kids with. So when we do the testing, we find out where we land, and then we know what we're going to target, and we start hitting the areas we want. So the takeaway on this here is our math going from grade 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to grade 9. This is our ELA going all the way down. And the rows that you, the rows that you want to look at, this here is in June of 21, this is June of 22, and we're going to have June of 23 here, but that'll be our third term here. So these are the comparisons. A few years ago, we had this one running here. A year ago, we had that, and now we're nice green running all the way through it. So that'll be on math, and this will be running on ELA. These two rows and this one right here. And as we go across, we see that it's trending in the right direction. Red, red, yellow, or red, yellow, 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 green. And that's just a result of the targeted interventions that we're putting into place. I'm pretty happy taking that one home to mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, and as we kind of alluded to, this is kind of the wrap up of the educational sector strategic plan, moving into the provincial education plan, but there are some things that are going to be pulling forward. For example, the sense of belonging anxiety, as Keith mentioned earlier, that's going to be really pulled into the mental health and well-being focus area of the new provincial education plan. So our actions and things we're planning in there is looking back to some of the mental health capacity building pieces we've put into place in schools, kind of shining the light on those again. These are the Teach Mental Health curriculum that we've brought out of UBC, and we've used that. It was probably 4 years ago we went through that as an entire system. Probably time to look at the newer version of that and kind of refresh some of those ideas. With the treaty outcomes, we are one of 2 school divisions that report on treaty outcomes, so we're way ahead of the game there as far as being. A lot of folks have to do the logistics first. We're already working on, okay, now we've got logistics, we've got it going. How do we make sure we're addressing that? Obviously, that fits really nicely into the Inspiring Success focus area in the new provincial education plan. The teaching and learning that we're setting up, which is there's going to be some provincial-wide assessments in different grade levels for different subject areas. But I'm fortunate enough to be on that team, and we're trying to make it mimic or look like our work that we do here, where we have a screen and you get the results quickly and you can react. Other provincial assessments we've had before, we would get the results in June, and the kids would go on to the next grade, and the results would kind of may or may not go with them, and we didn't really have any time to react or be able to inform instruction. With the new plan that we're trying to set up for the teaching learning specifically, it's going to mirror a lot of the work that we've done here. So I think we're in a really good spot as far as procedures and pieces we have in place. Might be a little bit of adjusting as that actually what we're measuring, but the how to measure it and how to dig in and how to impact assessment for kids and achievement for kids. We're good there. We're good there. It's just actually just changing our focus on some of the measures. And then, like Keith mentioned earlier, I don't think we're ever going to be at a spot where we stop checking how our kids are doing in reading and how our kids are doing in math. Now that we've got that, we have access to that data, and we can prove that when we see something that needs to be addressed and we can address it, that it's an improvement. Why would you ever kind of walk away from that? And then the last pillar I didn't mention, which one did I miss?
Transition.
The transition one. That's where we would be looking at credit attainment. How many credits are kids going from grade 9 to grade 10? What sort of system level things we have set up to help support students when they transfer from one school to the next. We've got transition documents. We've got a lot of those pieces built, but once again, shining a light on them again, so that it's common knowledge for everybody that we have those pieces in place. So I think we're in a really good spot to set us up for the success for the next 7 years. I'm not scared about next year. I'm excited about next year, and I think we've got it's going to be a good time to kind of refresh and refocus on some things. And as Jeff said, I would take your report card home anytime too. I think we're doing really well, and our teachers have done a great job.
Other than my attendance, my dad might be cutting.
He probably knew where you were there.
How's graduation rates compared to our forward years?
We won't know that until June. Until June, yeah. So I can get back to you on December 20th with that one, Kevin, on how we ended up with this semester. You wait, okay, perfect. It'll be an early Christmas present for you to get those numbers.
I would suspect they're pretty decent. We do the credit attainment kind of throughout the year. It's a snapshot to see where we're at. We're pretty reasonable in terms of where we had our snapshot back when we were done the first term. So my assumption would be, knowing that, looking at what we were doing and where we were at and the processes in place. We'll wait to see on the numbers, but I would guess they're probably pretty good. We're typically quite a bit higher than the provincial average. So both on our 3 and 5 year graduation rates.
Should continue.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric.
That's it there. Anybody have any questions for the team? Thanks very much. It's great to see the report, and we look forward to being the end of June and all in well for next year. Okay. So, item number 7.1. That's right. That's where I am. Director's report.
Personnel report. Posted there for you.
It was posted for you to review. I had an opportunity to look at it this morning. So a motion for the director's report be approved as presented. Someone have a motion?
I have a motion that the director's personnel report be approved as presented.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'd just like to give everybody a heads up because of the classroom complexity funding. The report that you're going to see in your next meeting is going to be quite substantive. We've had to rework a lot of contracts to accommodate things. So just give you a heads up because I won't be here to tell that story. So,
but it's a good story.
It's a good story.
Thank you.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. At the last meeting, we had a monitoring report on system goal number 4. We've always give time for the board to have a look at the report again and come back with any questions, and we have heard none. So it's on here for adoption, but maybe you speak to it.
Sure. System goal 4 is systematically building, strengthening, and maintaining two-way communication with internal and external stakeholders. I think we had a report there, as well as we had some presenters come. We had Ms. Callie Cugnett, our communications officer, provided overview and samples of engagement and communication during the school year.
And then we had Adam Wilson, Tyler Fehrenbach, principal of Carlisle Elementary, and April Evers, teacher at Carlisle Elementary School, provide examples of how they used EDSB as a method of communication for parents. So you had an opportunity to see those particular pieces of information.
Thank you, Keith. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that the board find acceptable the monitoring report on system goal number 4 presented May 24th, 2023 and do so by resolution.
Thank you, Norma. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Now, we are going to have Shelley talk about our final budget. Acknowledge that Mr. Thompson here today, he asked to come to the meeting, invited him to sit in and listen to the budget. He may have a question or so, but it's outside of our protocol, but I think we will find time for questions. So I'll just turn it over to Shelley.
All right, so our proposed budget for 23-24 includes revenue of $114 million, operating expenditures of $115.3 million, capital expenditures of $7.6 million, and total staff of 1,082.93 full-time equivalents. Our budget is prepared in accordance with public sector accounting, otherwise known as PSAP standards. And that requires the amortization of capital assets over their useful life and the recording of provincial grants at the time they have been authorized. The PSAP operating deficit for the year is $1,234,542. So in this, for an example, in terms of what PSAP means in terms of this particular budget, we would, in that 114 million in revenues there'd be 4.2 million for the building of the new school, to start the building of that new school in Carlisle. That new school in Carlisle doesn't actually flow into operating expenditures here until it's completed. And then it's expensed over 50 years, over its useful life. So because that number is not reflective of what our cash budget is, we do a conversion to a cash budget. And if you're looking at the budget document, this information is found on page 5. So if we jump to the end on page 13, that's where we take that information. So we take that 114 million in revenue and break it out into capital, PMR, operating, our operating expenses of 115 million. Again, do the same thing. Break out our tangible capital assets in terms of where the funding comes from for those categories. And pull out some non-cash expenses, and then we get down at the end of the day. Conversion of our budget to a cash basis results in an operating cash deficit of just over 2.9 million. You'll see that in the yellow there. The majority of the division's funding comes from the provincial operating grant, which is announced in March with the provincial budget. The March announcement contained a 0.2% increase in funding from the current 22-23 fiscal year. In June, additional funding was announced to support classroom complexity and enrollment growth, resulting in an increase of 1.1% compared to current year. Unfortunately, this increase is not enough to cover increased costs for salaries and benefits or general inflation. Since 2015-2016, the division has seen either a decrease or a minimal increase to their operating grant. We've got a bit of a slide here that shows you a picture of that. And when we do a comparison of our funding per student FTE compared to 8 years ago in 15-16, it is only a 3.7% increase.
It's about a 21% increase in COLA during that time, calculated COLA.
To lower the deficit for 23-24, reductions were made to both classroom teachers and division level supports for students and teachers. And so those division level supports would also include some folks that actually are teachers, they're just not in the classroom. So compared to the prior year budget, classroom teachers were reduced 3.93 FTE and division supports for students and teachers were reduced 8 FTE. The additional funding announced in June allowed for 9.52 classroom teachers to be added back into the budget.
As you're aware, what we did with all of those dollars is we put every one of those dollars back in the classroom teachers. We didn't put anything back into the division office. We kept those positions out, and we're gonna try to function without those positions there. Just felt the classroom complexity funding, we put it directly into the teachers, and we're still short by about 3.93. So, at 8 division level supports, 6 of those are actually support teachers in classrooms, so there'll be less supports for teachers at that level as well, just so you're aware.
And then just to mention, follow up ties in with Andy's presentation. We have taken over some contracted routes this year. We're taking over a bit some more next year. So we did have to increase our staffing in the transportation department, a total of 24 FTE. Majority of those would be bus drivers. So drilling down into a little bit of the dollars now, our revenues of 114 million breaks down into 91% or 103.8 million coming from various provincial operating grants. Then we did get that 4.2 million or 4% coming from the Ministry of Education as a capital grant for the start of the new pre-K to grade 12 school in Carlisle. 3.1 million or 3% is raised at the school level through fees, commercial sales, and fundraising to support student events and activities such as field trips, extracurricular sports, and graduation ceremonies. 1.6 million or 1% comes from other sources such as interest revenue, food sales, rental revenue, and some federal grants. And 1.3 million or 1% comes from tuition fees, the majority for students living on a First Nation that are attending Southeast Cornerstone schools. That's a picture of your revenues. Picture of your operating expenses. So we have 115.3 million. The majority of those, 82.6 million or 72% is for salaries and benefits. This includes 499.68 teaching FTEs and 583.25 non-teaching FTEs.
If I may, we have, the teachers are up right now for negotiation. They have in most cases covered the teaching raises from the provincial government, but there was the one time they didn't cover those raises when there was an increase in the amount that the teachers are funded. There's never been any dollar recognition of the increases for the 583.25. So those increases every year have fallen on the backs of making sure that we can fund it from the dollars that come from the provincial government. So, sorry.
That's great. The next biggest slice of the pie there is for goods and services at 25.1 million or 22%. Then there's that piece for amortization, 7 million or 6%. So again, capital assets are expensed into operating over their useful lives through amortization. And then we do have a few capital loans from previous school builds. So they're just a small 0.5 million or 5% for debt service. And then on top of all that, we do have some capital expenditures that we need to buy and pay for. Total of 7.6 million is projected for next fiscal year. And that consists of 4.2 million to start the new pre-K to 12 school in Carlisle, 1.5 million for school buses, 1.3 million for computer hardware and equipment, which includes a computer refresh for 10 schools, as well as some networking equipment upgrades. 424,000 for various furniture and equipment across the school. That meets that capitalization threshold. And 245,000 for some fleet vehicle replacements. So the cash operating deficit of 2.9 million will be funded by accumulated surplus from prior years. At the end of 21-22 fiscal year, the division had 22.7 million in available surplus. The surplus will decrease to 11.9 million at the end of 23-24 if the budgeted deficits for 22-23 and 23-24 are realized. And so we just got a little picture there. The past couple of years, we broke that down into unrestricted and internal. You'll see the 2.4 million budgeted for this year. We also have some buses that we've identified and internally restricted that we need to purchase. Now, whether they get here this year or some might not get here until next year, it still draws down that number. And then if we realize that full 2.9 that we have estimated for next year, and a budget is just an estimate, That brings us down to 11.9 million. And there's just a little picture that illustrates the trend of that available surplus that we've been using to offset our deficits. That is the budget in a nutshell.
Well, we've certainly gone through this budget over and over again and tried to find all the efficiencies that we could. And we submit this for government approval, having a motion of the board. Do you have a question?
If it's all right, I do have a couple of questions. So I do appreciate the time today to reference. Again, I'm a parent from Gladmar School, and obviously we get announcements that we're losing more teachers. We're not happy. So I'm here. I'd like to learn just a little bit more about the budget and process. I've had a number of conversations, with Michelle and Audrey and Kevin over the years as well too. So I'm trying to understand more, and certainly I don't want to take up too much time, and probably opportunities for more offline conversations with Keith and whoever to understand a little bit better. But quick question: the number there on the teaching versus non-teaching, does the teaching include like EAs, or is that?
No.
Okay, so teaching is straight up teachers in the classroom. Okay.
So you're aware too, Ryan, that one of the pieces that we haven't done is touch the EA staffing, because we really have only EAs funded for high needs intensive behaviors or medically fragile students, or in the smallest schools, if there's a split of K1-2 over the number of 15, we've also assigned one there. So we don't feel like we're even able to take anything. So that's never been touched.
Okay. All right, and just so everybody else is aware, I had a meeting with Minister Duncan yesterday, obviously, because I'm very concerned about the trend in our schools here in Saskatchewan. Obviously I'm very concerned about my own school, but I realize that, it's not just about my school. I mean, this is a big picture problem. So I'll keep my questions very brief, and I'll maybe touch base with Keith and Kevin later on about some of the other ones that I do. How many teachers do we want? How many teachers do we need in this division? We have 499, correct? Or that's the plan. How many do we need?
There's no magic number, Ryan.
I understand that, but
as you kind of have identified, that it's a matter then of when we look at the numbers across the system, if we get squished much more, we're starting to get to the point where we've got multiple grades in small classrooms. You realize we've got large grades in some of our larger schools where we've got 29, 30, 32, 33 kids in a classroom. I guess my response would be, how well do you want the students to do in our school system? Because that, at the end of the day, it boils down to how many teachers can we put in classrooms. The board has always tried to align their philosophy of success and achievement for every student in every school with putting as many dollars into the classroom as we can. That's why when the dollars came in, we put every last one of those dollars back into the classroom. If we had another $1 million, we'd put it back into classroom teachers, because I believe that's where the difference gets made. So I can't give you a number in terms of how many do you want. I'd love to have twice as many teachers as we have, but I don't think that's reasonable either, right?
And I'm just trying to understand, like at some point there's some diminishing returns on more and more teachers.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, across the province, if everybody could say, is it 20 kids to a teacher? Is it 15 kids to a teacher? If we pull the number out of an ideal world,
There used to be at one time, we used to have one teacher per 22 kids. Now that's, or because you haven't got as many teachers. So now you got one teacher per
And the reality
so many
is,
more kids, so the teaching is just harder to.
the reality is in some schools, there aren't 20 kids in a grade.
No,
So
I understand all of the challenges.
Yeah, that's another whole.
Yeah, and I've done a little research, and there's different divisions have different numbers. I mean, some of them, it seems like it's down as low as 18 or something, and I'm just curious.
Well, and
there's obviously difference in school sizes and all those sorts of things.
And what I would say is, within our division, there are differences even within individual schools. So you come from Gladmar, it depends how you calculate it too. So if we take a straight PTR ratio, how many teachers do you have in your school for the number of students? It's about a 1 to 13 ratio. So that 1 to 13 ratio doesn't mean there's 13 kids in the classroom.
Oh, I
Because
understand.
you've got administrators, and you've got special education teachers, and you've got response to intervention teachers. So even the numbers that divisions report are different based on how you're going to slice those numbers. What I can tell you is we have a higher PTR in our larger schools than our smaller schools, just out of a recognition that it's more difficult to operate in multiple grades. So it's always a competing interest that we have that conversation around.
It's probably fair, though, certainly,
Yeah.
without assigning a number to it, that the number of students across the province has increased over the past several years, but the number of teachers has not significantly
I
kept
think a
up.
really good indication that if you go back to about 2015, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but how many new students the province got in the last 7-8 years? And you can look it up through the government statistics someplace, but how many students the province has got over the last 7-8 years? And how many new teachers have been hired over the last 7-8 years? And I think you'll find it's mind-blowing.
I certainly understand the challenges. I guess, my question to you then is, if Minister Duncan was sitting here today, would we say we need $1 million? Would we say we need $30 million? Well,
$6 million more.
okay, and so why do we need $6 million? I'm just trying to understand, so that when I'm having a conversation, that I can echo that.
But that's a pretty simple one to operate from one year to the next. We do the exact same things this year that we were trying to do last year, with the same staffing and the same programs and all of those pieces. When we calculate the budget out at the end of the day, we're $6 million short.
Okay, so $6 million does not put any more teachers in our classroom.
That keeps things status quo. So Brian, the budget process, when you see $2.9 million there, that's after we've gone to the board and cut $3 million out of the budget.
No, I
In
understand.
order to operate this is the same way basically. So when she says $6 million, that's to operate the same as we were last year to the next year.
Well, we are the same dollar value coming in today as we were 2015. And we weren't flush in 2015. We weren't like, wow, we just got nothing but dollars in 2015, and we're getting the same dollars today as we got in 2015.
And what we
We
found
weren't
is,
flush then.
amazing inflationary rates in some of our things like insurance, software, busing, facilities, maintenance, parts. So when you think, okay, well, inflation was about 6% last year, we have a $100 million budget. That would make sense that we're short $6 million from one year to the next, right?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it. I understand the challenges, and I understand what you guys have had to do over the last number of years. And I guess what I'm trying to do is focus on solutions and, how can I, as a concerned parent, help? And I understand that talking to Minister Duncan is one way I can help. I mean, can I get him to write a check for $6 million tomorrow? Yeah, I would guess probably not.
Pretty cool if you could.
It doesn't mean I'm not gonna try. And so I'm trying to understand, and that's what I'm here to do. We spoke just briefly, Keith, earlier about a board policy around surplus. What is this board's goal for an accumulated surplus? What would we like to carry? What do we need those dollars for?
That's a great question.
Well, I'll speak to that. We've hobbled over that for a long time. So any business should have some money to operate for a few months of operations, for sure. But, over the years, there was we just recorded all of our surplus as a surplus, and other divisions put money into all kinds of designated surplus. So as of last year, the ministry said we need to designate our surplus. So it's still under the control of the board, but you need to designate. So we've done that. We talked about that a lot. We've had meetings about what percentage of the budget should we have. Basically, we know that it doesn't seem feasible or good business to operate with no surplus at all. If we didn't have a surplus now, we would have had to cut another 40 teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So because we're budgeting for $3 million, we still have 40 more kids and the teachers in the classrooms than we would have had. So it's really frightening to even imagine that we would have no surplus at all, because then we would have no options than to cut those 40 teachers. And that's just very upsetting. So I think our surplus needs to be at least enough to cover the deficits that the government does with their funding. Like, if we're not being funded at a cost of living increase and to be able to maintain, we have to have some surplus. And of course, a budget's a budget. We don't always realize the amount of our budget. We sometimes have some surplus left over our budget, and we hope for that. But I don't think that we have too much surplus. But I guess I understand that the government's concerned with how much boards of education and other entities in the province that have surplus. But I ask you, what's a reasonable amount?
I don't know the answer to that, but I guess the reason I'm asking, and you're all well aware that, you know, when you discussed it with Minister Duncan, he said, well, they've got a surplus. Well, but if we know that we need the surplus for this, and this, and if we need 4 million a year for expected shortfalls from government, can we set some board policy around that? So that we go back to the minister and say, look, yes, we have surplus, but this is why we have surplus. And here's our board policy. We can't go and assume that we're going to have to cut 40 teachers when we run out of money. So our policy is we keep this much in reserve so that we can ensure that we can hire teachers when there's government shortfalls. So I'm suggesting that as a board, you know, putting some policy around that probably makes the argument a lot easier with government that, you know, instead of, well, we think we need it for this, but there's no policy. I think that's a
We're not in
challenge.
control of our budget though. Because.
But
I understand it, so that's why we need surplus.
We have done
Put
this.
some policy around.
Do you have a bank account? How much savings do you need?
I would say,
That's what it is.
Okay, so if we need six, I understand what it is, but I'm saying let's put some board
But we've
policy
done that.
around
That's what I'm trying to say. We did that. We spent a great deal of time doing that. That we designated our surplus into the designated surplus, this much for capital, this much for busing, this much for. So we've done that already. And trust me, we have brought our MLAs to this table every year. And Mr. Minister is also our MLA.
Absolutely.
We have 4 others. We invite them to come to the boardroom. We go through everything. We show them the funding. We show them the shortfalls we've had, and they all nod their heads, but they don't necessarily control Treasury Board. I believe that Minister Duncan had the authority, we would all have all the money we need, but he has to trade his
He's got to
faith.
sell it to his cabinet. Right?
And the Treasury Board make the decisions, and everybody's looking for money everywhere. So
I don't want to belabor and I don't want to drag your meeting out, but is there a number that you, like, have you set policy that says I need this much money to cover expected government shortfalls in the future?
not a designated amount, but Shirley does.
I would just maybe make you aware that there's certain buildings that the government doesn't fund in terms of new builds. They only fund schools. So when we needed a new bus garage, we had to find the money to pay for that ourselves. They don't fund division offices, bus shops, bus garages, maintenance shops, anything but a new build. So if you need a new building, you're on your own to find that money. So we were fortunate enough that we had money in our surplus to build the bus garage that we needed. And Minister Duncan's fully aware of that.
Okay, so I assume some of that then is designated for capital purchases.
Yes.
Okay, and there's policy around that.
Yes.
Yes.
And so is that confidential board information, or is that a
It's in our
public document?
financial statements. It's
It's on a statement.
Yep.
So
You want the exact date?
So
Okay, but is there, at this point, there's no line item that says we need X amount of dollars for expected government?
part of the issue is.
because we don't know what that
When we
is.
put in
We don't know
for,
what that is.
if you're gonna, that's part of what the SSB has been campaigning for, the School Boards Association has been campaigning for, is at least predictable, sustainable funding. So you know from one year to the next, how much you're gonna be short or how much you're gonna be over. Because I couldn't have guessed last year that we'd be $6 million short when we started that budgeting process, right? We've had some years, as you've seen, if you go way back, that we were well within the range. But if we had predictable, sustainable funding, you could say, well, we think we're gonna be short by $1 million or $2 million over the next 3 years. That's how much we need to leave there. I think we were fortunate to be at the place we were at upon amalgamation and upon what we looked at, where we had some money that was in a surplus so that we could offset some of the shortfalls in that funding. When you look at the total dollar amount, I don't know how much as a business you'd put in, but if it's a $100 million budget, if you get down to $11 million, you're 10% of your operating budget. You're less than 1 month of operating expenses. I do know there are some divisions who have run out of that surplus or have a hard time making payroll, or they're running into their credit lines in order to do it. And now you got extra expense because you're into that piece. So.
And the government knows very well that those school divisions have no surplus, and they're saying we need a balanced budget, cut teachers, cut.
Yeah.
So it's, even if we did have a policy in place that we need 10%, 20%, whatever, they're just looking at, do you have extra money? And, I'm not sure that that policy in place is going to sway the government when you have a school division right now they're forcing them to do a balanced budget through.
I'm just going by what they always tell you, everybody should have 6 months surplus. I'm talking personally. 6 months surplus for us would be $60 million. We've got money.
Again, I don't want to drag it. I mean, we're talking a lot about the challenges. I truly do understand the challenges. I understand, I've looked at budgets and I understand, we've got a lot, and ultimately there's casualties in the division office, and teachers are also now becoming a casualty, and I understand that's a challenge, and it's affecting my children, and I don't like it.
But I do, I would say, we do extra funding in for our remote schools, our schools of necessity. So, comparatively, your PTR is much lower than a bigger school. So,
Ryan, I'd have to say to you that because, I'm a teacher myself. I have kids that just graduating this year, actually, but I don't like it either.
And I know nobody here likes it, right?
Nobody around this board likes to see less teachers in schools, which is why we try to manage as much as possible at the division level.
Okay, just one more question if I could. You just brought it up. I understand there's different formulas for different schools. Could you explain to me what so I'm a small school of necessity where I'm at. What is your formula for teachers in my school?
So there's a formula that drives all of it to start with. And then we've had a separate formula that we've had to play with over the years in order to, as we've had these teacher cuts, if we cut out of all of our schools, we have to cut the same amount out of our smallest schools. So I believe Gladmar gets, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's about it's around one extra teacher.
1.04 this year.
1.04 teachers in that school extra as a result of it being a small K-12 school. So, and the number varies a little bit based on how small you are. Are you a K-12 or are you a K-8? Knowing it's harder to operate the high school classes without the extra staff, right? You're going to have to try to provide some of those specialized courses at that level. So, as an overall number, that Gladmar would get that one extra teacher as a result of being, I think, either at 77 next year, 78 in that.
Yeah, so we're working at 5.7 plus a 10% or 15%. So it would be a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah, the base would have been 4.66 full-time equivalent teachers, and then we put in 1.04 to get you to the 5.7.
Okay, so the 4.66 is just enrollment.
Well,
that's what every school would write if you're at small.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
And
and then the 1.04, that's just an arbitrary number based on what you got for funding. So if you got extra funding, that goes up.
well,
It was based originally on a formula with brackets in it. And then what we did is we used those brackets, but as we've had to shrink staff over our entire system, because what happens is if you don't shrink the amount in that bracket, is you cut teachers from other places and end up putting them into the smallest schools and increasing the number of teachers while the rest of the system decreases those numbers.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Based on the research I've done, I mean, just based on the base instruction portion that comes from the province, I know Gladmar is 6.5 teachers because it's a small school of necessity under, I think it's 88. Is that the number?
K-12.
K-12 under 88. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around, how does this number translate to what your budget ends up at the end of the
You've
day?
heard talk about PTR, that's pupil teacher ratio. So a couple of years ago, when we first started getting this cut, we went from 21 to 23.
23.
So we went
21.75.
21.75. So one teacher per 21.75 students across the division. And we had to increase it to one teacher per 23 students. So that's the base across the division. So if you're looking for that number, then you've got the small school addition that is, like Keith said, based on some
I was
calculations.
interested in the number you just said, though. You said something about the provincial.
Yeah, so
Allow you.
from my research, I mean, when the province decides how much money to give you for your base instruction based on enrollments,
Right.
the calculation for Gladmar, because it is a small school of necessity, is 6.5. Doesn't ever drop below 6.5 with the funding that they figure out.
Do we get our funding based on, if the funding comes on how many students we have in the division? It doesn't,
In the formula itself,
from the government?
yes.
Their
Now,
formula
I'm not talking
doesn't-
about transport and all that. I'm just talking about their base instruction amount, which is, I mean, my numbers are probably a little bit updated, but 42 million.
It doesn't take into consideration the schools, it's just on the whole bunch, right?
Shall I speak to
There
the
is a
formula?
portion in the distribution model that accounts for small schools.
Oh, okay. It's very confusing.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm a cowboy trying to figure this out. It's taken me a lot of time to make these numbers, and I do appreciate the board's time. I don't want to take up too much, but again, I'm just trying to wrap my head around these numbers and so that I can understand them. One final comment, I've talked to a number of you guys in the past, and I'm certainly willing to help any way I can, with government relations and trying to get some money. If there's anything where a concerned parent is of help to you, you guys got my number, please call me. I'm more than willing to come and stand with you and beat our hands on the table and talk about it. But I always want to be prepared, and I think some of the things you've gotten me will help me today, and if it's all right, I'll follow up with Kevin and we've done some things
Okay,
offline.
that's
and
been
not
great.
take
Yeah,
up
and we
more
better
time.
get on with our agenda.
Thank you very much, I
Certainly.
appreciate it.
And just in terms of what we've designated for surplus and the uses, you can find it in Schedule F of our.
Schedule F, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. But we do need a motion now to approve.
Tammy, I'll move that the board approve the 2023-24 budget as presented, including minor changes made after the Ministry of Education's review and approval.
Thank you. For the motion, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. Now, we're at 7.23, the director's evaluation, and, we did that one already, we moved that up front, sorry about that. 4.24 is Canadian Union of Public Employees Local, 4869, and they have voted to accept our agreement. We need a motion then that we ratify.
I'll do that, long one.
Good.
Okay, so whereas the bargaining team of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 4869, and the Board of Education have reached a tentative agreement, and whereas the bargaining mandate of the board, including compensation package, duration of contract, and expiry date of contract have been accomplished, therefore be it resolved that the board ratify the tentative 3-year agreement commencing September 1, 2022 to August 31, 2025, as negotiated between the Board of Education and the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 4869.
Thank you, Eric. Gordon, would you like to just speak to this at all?
Yeah, I just was very pleased with how the negotiations went and the relationship that we do have with our QP partners. Again, it's comes back to relationships and having common understandings of the interests of both groups. And I think that's a great foundation for Southeast Cornerstone to continue to move forward with that relationship. And again, key interests on both sides of the conversation were met, and that's always a great answer for any negotiation.
Thanks, Gordon. Does anyone have any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, the motion's carried. Okay, 7.25, that we need to have changed some signing authorities because Gordon is leaving us to go to Prairie Valley. So I need an entity motion to do that. So, your vote is there.
That effective June 30th, 2023, Gord Husband be removed as signing authority for employment contracts other than the Director of Education's and be replaced by Nathan Johnson commencing August 1st, 2023.
Thanks, Demona. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. A, 7.26. There's a motion, the SEC from Glendale has requested to discontinue grade 9 and just operate as a K-8 school. And we have a motion from the SEC stating that, and we are required by legislation then to approve that, and then the school would continue till the end of June, and it would be a K-8 school starting September 1. There has not been any grade 9 students in that school for a number of years because there's options to go to either Estevan or Weyburn, depending on your location in the rural municipality. So students have been opting to go to either Estevan or Weyburn for their high school. So the Lindale School actually requested a motion. I will move this motion. Whereas the board has received a request from Lindale School Community Council for the discontinuance of grade 9 at Lindale School, therefore be it resolved that school division administration regulations moved that the Board of Education discontinue grade 9 at Lindale School effective July 3rd, 2023. Heard the motion? Any discussion?
I just want to make it super, super clear that this is the school asking us to discontinue grade 9 at that school.
That's correct.
Yeah, the parents of that school.
And that is requested by them, and that is required then by legislation that we follow through with that. I think it's a good move. They're low enrollment, and children there are opting out to go to the comprehensive school. So.
Right, and it makes busing more clear, I guess would be the word.
And their school necessity, which
The
does.
fact that we actually have no students in grade 9.
And haven't for a number of years. They've been in grade 9, but opting to go to high school. And if all of them opted to go, if there were 1 or 2, we would let them go. So they've asked us to do this, and this, as you know, the school of necessity only applies to K-8. After, if this school, not a school within 40 kilometers, then K-8 schools are schools of necessity. So this will remove that from them ever having to be discontinued for anything. So I moved the motion. Anyone opposed to the motion? All those in favor, I guess.
One motion where I could be wholeheartedly in favor of it, because we haven't had one really yet.
I'm not really in favor of it. So I'm just glad that the community makes their own decisions. That's what
But
I don't like having to impose.
Got its downsides, and the union negotiations had its downsides, and the budget had its downsides.
I really like taking signing authority away from Gord.
I never thought of it that way.
Just kidding.
Necessities.
So now we got 7311.
Yes.
Okay, the highlights of.
We're doing a highlight of individual school each time, so today we have, this is where actually I went to Perryville School grade K to 9.
Hey,
My home school.
I look at it and I always feel all my bases.
It's way better than it used to be.
We
just so you
won't
know.
hold that against Kerry though. I see all the remodeled rooms that I did.
Volume?
Welcome to Perryville School. My
There
name is
we
Mike Wolf. I'm the principal. We have a K-8 school. We have approximately 88 kids for this school year. We serve the communities of Caryville, Storth Oaks, and Gainsborough. We try to create an enthusiastic environment for learning. We also try to cultivate the sense of self-respect, and we try to provide tools for success in the diverse and challenging world. Our motto of our school is learn to live, live to learn. At Caryville School, we have a very active SEC that we're very grateful for. We also have a very supportive community, and that are very dedicated to a lot of the school activities that happen at Caryville School. We have many things that go on. For example, we have the Welcome Back Barbecue, we have Grandparents' Day, we have the Christmas brunch, we have Christmas suppers, we have our music program, we have spring concert and bake sale, the Mother's Day and Father's Day pop-up shop where the kids have an opportunity to buy a gift for their mothers and fathers. Our SCC helps us purchase resources such as library books for the classroom, and they also help us with our STEM buddy resources such as Makey Makeys and Osmobots that help our students with their technology needs for the future.
When it comes to our SEC, the people on it, I have 11 ladies plus Mr. Wolf. They are beyond amazing. They do anything, they volunteer, they cook, they fundraise. We just finished fundraising for a new gym floor, and we raised enough money in one night thanks to our amazing community in Caryville. Not just our school, but the whole community.
First and foremost is the community support we feel from the parents. The support we feel just the day in, day out, the communication we have and everything. We had a huge, great fundraiser this year. We saw the support from the community, and it's just great to see. Another great thing that I personally like around here is all the extracurricular stuff we do, building connections with students, be it in the gym, during sports, after school for clubs. So one of my favorite times is cooking with the grade 7 and 8s for lunches. So just a really great school, and it's all thanks to the parents as well.
My favorite thing about Caryville is the friendly environment and how we're involved in lots of sports and we get to do lots of fun things.
My favorite thing about Caryville School is all the friendly students and all the friendly teachers and all the activities we get to do.
It is very open here. The teachers are, I can't even find the right words. The teachers are beyond amazing here. They work with the kids. Mr. Wolf has always got his door open for anybody that needs him.
My favorite part about school is that we're all treated equally. My favorite part about Caryville School is that we have really fun gym classes and really nice staff and kids, and we have games at assemblies.
My favorite thing about Caryville School is the fun, amazing teachers and the sports opportunities.
The thing I like about Caryville School is that everybody gets along and everybody is always nice to each other. The thing I like about Caryville School is all the fundraisers and all the fun and exciting things we get to do.
Did you see Jim's wife in there?
I did.
How many years has she been there now?
39.
39 years as an EA in that school.
Was she just sitting at a desk with the child? Oh, I moved my finger.
Audrey, you're missing a leg, you can't afford
Oh.
it.
Come on, don't pick on me.
Yikes.
I did that.
Have you had that thing figured out? Or
Oh, it's terrible. It's hurt myself. Kevin, you just wait. It won't be more than a couple weeks and I'll have a leg to stand on.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, then we're all in trouble.
Leave it alone.
That should sit down.
Hey, that was really nice presentation. Okay, the next item is 7.3.12, and that is the Public Schools Saskatchewan Citizenship Award, and we have a link to that. You want to look that up? We got to go in. I'll just try not to rain.
Hey guys, we're the senior SRC and welcome to
So, here we plug one with this.
I'm Stephanie. I'm Mitzi. And this is Ellie. And this is the application for the Saskatchewan Citizenship Award.
The WCS Senior SRC has been running the Giving Tree fundraiser for several years. This is our major activity to give back to the community.
Each year, we reach out to the principal of the selected elementary school to look at their student body and select the families that need support throughout the holiday season.
We have a week-long fundraiser in our school to gather the money needed to pay for the baskets, as well as each class is assigned to certain items to purchase. Each family receives at least one gift per person and a basket of food to last them throughout the holiday season. After the week of fundraising, our senior SRC gathers all the donations. We sort the items into baskets for each family, purchase any items that were not donated, and wrap all the presents. This past year, we were able to provide 11 families with a holiday because our school community gathered together to raise money for a good cause.
When we present the gifts at the school, it is treated like a random draw, so the kids and families are not alienated for being low income or in need. When the kids are given their gifts, their smiles make up for all the hard work put into this fundraiser. We want to utilize the funds from this award to be able to provide support for even more families in the community in the following years.
Hi everybody, my name is Vanessa Flavel. I am an SRC advisor here at Weyburn Comprehensive School. We're going to speak to you about the Giving Tree, which is an activity in our building that I've been involved with for at least 10 years.
And I'm Megan Martinson. I'm also an advisor here for the senior SRC in our building, and I've been doing it for about 6 years since our school came over. And so one of the questions we were asked is, how is this impacting us as advisors? And really, us as advisors, we're just the facilitators. Our team, our SRC team really steps up and just kind of takes this and runs with it. And it's just so fun to see them grow as leaders as they're doing this in a big scale, I guess, for other cities or schools in the city as well. And it's a really good feel-good event, and it's nice to be able to be a part of that.
Right, and our school, the impact on our school is the bigger, grander sense of community, because it's everybody working towards a goal that's larger than ourselves. It's a supportive goal, it's a charitable goal, and it has ripple effects across our city because it involves all of our schools coming together in our city, and we're just facilitating it. Our students completely take the lead on this, and it's neat to see how they support each other. They just totally get on board. It's awesome.
Yeah, something we look forward to every year.
Every year.
Yes. Excellent.
Now, I'd like to
That was presented the script of the SSBA, so we're all very
Thank you
congratulations.
for watching our video, considering our application, and supporting our Giving Tree fundraiser.
Mikey didn't. That was the most fun I've had at the SSBA meeting, was sitting talking to those girls. They were very excited.
Excellent. APs.
I'm trying to keep it.
Yep.
Yeah. 7342.
7341.
41, sorry.
AP, this is just some updates to some of our administrative procedures. Students with intensive needs, Administrative Procedure 210. There's a rather detailed update of that procedure just to reflect some of the newer research around that, actualizing needs-based models, inclusive education from the Saskatchewan Ministry of Education in 2021, as well as a document called Supporting All Learners from the Ministry of Education, Welcome Supporting All Learners. So that's a relatively thorough update of that. They've done a very good job of that. That's just for your information. Student transportation. There's an update to the student transportation AP, just to more accurately reflect what our actual processes are in transportation around things like times to be picked up and ensuring lanes are free of trees and branches, for example. Going down into corporate sponsorship, partnership, donations, and advertising. We noticed that, thank you, Shelley, for bringing that forward. We had 2 APs that are that were focused around similar things. So we're deleting AP 153, which is advertising and sponsorship, as we had a corporate sponsorship and partnership, donations and advertising, administrative procedure, and many of those pieces fell under. So we've added some of those pieces from 153, administrative procedure 153, into AP 525. You want to add on that?
That's about it.
And then we have one final administrative procedure on the new distance learning center. We're still waiting for some updates on exactly how it will operate. They're still hiring people in that particular school. Maybe a little behind the eight ball in terms of their timing on that, but we're putting an administrative procedure in place, assuming that things will operate similar to how they are now. And if things change, we'll have to tweak that one, but we can be an administrative procedure in place of how students will access and will allow the access to that. So all of those particular pieces have been updated in that administrative procedure.
Learning and learning. Number 8. Okay, the quarterly operating financial board report and quarterly report and board expense report. It's been posted for your review. You need a motion to approve the.
You want to give?
Oh, are we going to?
Marilyn's here too.
Or there first. That's a big table today.
That is timing though, Marilyn.
Walk right in. Thank you. She's scared. Thank you.
I just went like this, Marilyn, come in.
Read Shelley's mind.
Again, some teen scary.
Okay, so yes, the quarterly report was posted there for you. Just as a overall look at things, as of the end of May, we have received $72,273,235 within all of our revenue categories. And on the expense side of things, we have spent $86,580,689. If we look at those as a percentage, we are 3/4 of the way through the year. And so right now, on the revenue side, we're just above 73% received, which is reasonable. There are some grants that we don't actually recognize until the end of the year because we budget for some grants that they cover expenses that the ministry pays on our behalf, kind of some of the CNET costs and some of those. And so those don't get recognized until the end of the year. So 73% is very reasonable. On the expense side of things, we're just below 76%. Again, very reasonable. A lot of our teaching staff are paid over 10 months, and so we're 9 of the 10 months paid at the end of May, and so that's where those things are sitting for you. If we look to the projection and the numbers within some of the various categories, I'll just kind of go over some of the variances that you see. In our grants area, we did have some adjustments for enrollment changes that were completed back with our September 30th enrollments. And we had a decrease from budget of $333,055. Our projection also accounts for some various grants that were not known when budget was set for the current year. We received $200,000 for invitational shared services grant at the Arcola and Stoughton schools, and we have also received $181,591 for mental health capacity building program at the Weyburn College School. In total, right now you'll see that the report is showing that our grants are projected to be about $69,245 above. Tuition and related fees, in that category, we're projecting to be above budget as well by $222,372. And that's just, we had additional students in that category additional students compared to what we planned on when we set our budget. In school generated funds, our current projection shows our expectation to be under budget here by $860,000. That's one where when we set budget, it's kind of a guess that I make. And with the previous 2 years having a lot of COVID restrictions in place, we had just maintained the budget at the level prior to COVID happening for both the school generated funds and revenue and expense. And so this year is kind of a year that we're getting back to things, and so you'll probably see some adjustments in budget there going forward. But right now, that's where we're projecting it to come in. Complementary services,
In that area, the projection shows us being over budget by $63,451. And this represents some additional funds received for Kids First programming. And so we'll have expenses that are associated with those grants as well. In external services, typically this is where we have our expenses for cafeterias and teacherages. We've also record our portion of the federal grant we received for Jordan's Principle for the respite program in this area. And so our projection is showing that we do plan on being over budget in that area as well. In other revenue, our projection shows the expectation for our interest and royalty revenue to be $450,000 above budget. We reduced that budget a little bit in this past year because we had spent up some of our surplus funds. However, our interest that we're receiving is more than what we had received in previous years. So we got some dollars there higher than what we had expected. On the expense side of things, in the governance area, our projection shows some small variances on specific expense categories, but overall the governance budget is projected to be under budget by about $27,000. In the administration side of things, while you note that building operating expenses and amortization are expected to be over budget, there are several other areas that we plan to be under budget. And so the total projection in admin costs is to be under budget by $85,024. In instruction, most of the expense lines are projected to be over budget as the costs associated with additional grants that we've received for the ISSE and for the mental health capacity building program get expensed here. This projection, we've also included an estimate for our retro costs that are associated with both CUPE and SEIU recently negotiated agreements. And so they've been factored into the projection. Instructional aids you'll see is over budget by $628,456 worth of computer equipment. And that's, they were in budget in the capital side of things. However, they didn't meet that $1,000 capitalization threshold. And so they get expensed in this area, which then you see an offset in amortization because we're not amortizing them the way we had thought at budget time. And so our amortization will be lower than budget in instruction due to that change. So in total, you'll see that our instruction projection shows us being over budget by $1.1 million in instruction. In the plant area, current projection shows the expectation to be under budget in supplies and services, travel, professional development, and amortization. However, the building operating expenses, communication, and non-capital furniture and equipment categories look to be higher than what we had set at budget time. Salaries have also been projected to include the retro costs associated with the union negotiated contracts, and the total overage in this area is projected to be about $312,000. In transportation, again, there are some areas that we plan to be under budget. One is salaries, professional development, and contracted transportation. We expect to see costs above budget in the other areas, such as supplies and services, non-capital furniture and equipment, building operating expenses, and communications. The amortization is likely to be over budget as well, and that's right now we're projecting to be over budget by $213,117 there, and that's just reflective of the fact that we purchased more buses than what we had planned at budget, and so those get amortized over the lifespan, and so that'll increase there. In our school generated funds, similar to the revenue side of things, we are currently projecting to be under budget there by $841,455. In complementary services, we expect the expenses to be over budget by $86,748, and these are costs that are associated with those additional grants I spoke about in the Kids First area.
And so the last two lines, that's why I make sure that everybody understands that those are just, we have revenue showing up at the top, showing like school generated funds was under, so their expenses were under. So these are ins and outs. And like Jordan's Principle, for example, those are included in those numbers. So although they showed under budget up here, they're also going under budget there. So they're offsetting. Just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. Sorry.
That's okay. In the external services, in the expense side of things, again, that's our school cafeterias and teacherages, as well as our Jordan's Principal Program and the Estevan Early Years Family Resource Center. And our projection here shows us being over budget by $166,588. That overage typically ties to the Family Resource Center and the Jordan's Principal Respite Program, because those were higher than budget. And so were the revenue side. So in other expenses, here we're projecting the area to be on track with budget, except for one area, which is the loss on disposal of tangible capital assets. The expenses that you'll see associated here tie to the sale of information technology equipment for both Lynn Little and Audrey that purchased for Carol Flynn's family. And so those weren't known. Those are things that aren't known at budget time, and so that variance will show there. Statement of operations variance report. If we have a quick look at the statement of operations, the tangible capital assets. As of May 31st, we've spent more than our budget in the purchase of tangible capital assets. The areas adjusted currently in this report are within the projection are school buses, furniture and equipment, computer hardware and audio visual equipment, and assets under construction. The buses we have purchased more than what we had in budget. However, we did have an allocation of surplus set aside for that purchase. And so that's why it wasn't actually in budget, but there was a board motion, I guess, to set the surplus aside. And so some of those have been received. There are still some that are outstanding. We are hopeful we'll receive them by the end of August, but we don't know that for sure at this point. In the assets under construction category, we do have a little bit of residual cost showing there, and that's just associated with the holdbacks and the deficiencies for the Legacy School Park project. And computer hardware and audiovisual equipment shows the plan. Our projection shows that we'll underspend in this area by $489,596. And again, that ties to the overage on the instructional expense side for those items that didn't meet the capitalization threshold. So in summary, when you look at the projection, we do expect our variance in revenue from budget to be an increase in revenue of $335,347. And on the expense side, we plan to be over budget by $790,174. That's the way things look right now. We always have a few things that come up as we get through our year-end process. We're being through June and July and August, we kind of wrap things up and go from there. Any questions that anybody has?
So when these buses run, we'll be transferring from reserves to cover those extra buses?
Yes, yeah. We do have not from reserves, within our allocated,
Yeah,
or our,
surplus.
yes.
Retreat.
Yeah, we do have an allocation.
From our restricted surplus, right?
Yeah.
Pay for that extra. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Marilyn?
The update, it's only our third quarter, so just gotta do that we're at.
Yeah.
Pictures are never ever pretty.
8.1111, someone's prepared to move a motion to accept.
I motion that the board accept the financial report as at May 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Megan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, the motion is carried. Thank you. Future meeting dates. So you guys will be heading off to the national conventions over the weekend. You all have all your funds in order. That's good. Thank you.
So can we
what should we do about expenses? Wait till August for that, or would you prefer August or prefer that we do it in July?
Wait till August, then we get the strategic plan.
Okay.
I think you bring that, the expenses they have from July.
You can send it in,
Send it
in last time, in July.
Probably won't decide till August, I guess, so you set it in.
I think that they have submitted July before. I think
Yeah,
so.
we did last year.
Okay.
And you'll,
We just do
you guys,
Those being looked after. though.
you guys will sign and, okay, so we can do it in July. Okay.
Sitting on what staff's doing, it might not be at the same time, but still payroll. So.
Right.
So, okay, so then for August 16th and 17th, we'll have an annual strategic planning meeting that will be here in Weyburn. And Jesus' work started with this, talked earlier about our agenda for that meeting. And we'll probably meet sometime between now and then finalize the agenda and get it out even earlier. We never just talked about what we're going to do about. We're going to have a meet supper after the first day and some people staying over for the next day to present the travel expense. And then August 30th is the first day that we will meet again. It will be in conjunction with the teachers convention as we're invited to attend there. So we have 3 functions that day, meaning that we'll have a gap between the time we meet with the teachers convention and with the athletics association. So we will hold our business meeting in Arcola in August. And we will give you heads up on the location when it's determined. Thanks. Then we'll attend the district athletics association annual meeting to wrap up that day. And then September 20th, the committee poll meeting and the regular meeting of the board. And I think we're pretty well wrapped up, okay? There's nothing else?
I will adjourn this last meeting of the school year.
You heard the motion. Jim says that the meeting adjourned. All those